Reporting on the games you love by people who love to game. The MMO Reporter Network.
You're logging into your favorite game, grinding out some gear. A couple of points added to your stats and you have a virtual beer. Max level is pretty cool, but I'll remind you here, my friend, these games are not about the goal, it's about the journey and not the end.
You're listening to MMO Reporter, brought to you by Typefrag, the web's best Ventrilo hosting service. Guild Launch, slay more dragons with Guild Launch. And by Doghouse Systems, choose your weapon at doghousesystems.com.
Don't forget about your ults you need to cherish. Each and every little character you've got, no matter what level they're at. Don't forget about your ults you need to cherish. Each and every...
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of MMO Reporter. This is episode 137, our first ever special episode completely dedicated to one game, and that is Everquest Next. We've had the reveal come out last week. We are so amazingly excited about it that we had to share all this news with you, and we thought that it filled up an entire podcast's worth of news. So here we are talking about it. We have got, of course, the wonderful Mr. Harry Hall, sports writer extraordinaire, apparently now.
Yeah. I completely switched profession now. I'm dedicating my life to writing about golf.
All right, and of course the Minion Master himself. Hello, Leonor.
Hello, Minions. One day I shall be a professional wrestler.
Thank you for sharing. So
put on your pants.
It takes.
You don't wear pants when you're wrestling.
That's why, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
That's why. Well, you know what? We have got some great stuff to talk about, Harry, so why don't you take it away?
Well, the reason that we are here today is to wet this game. No, we are talking about Everquest, and the first Everquest was an actual landmark title. This was the game that brought MMOing to the masses. We had MUDs before that. After that, we had UO, which was Ultima Online, which was a free-for-all, PvP-focused simulation, a very different beast than the games that we know today. Everquest came along. It was kind of a response to UO in the sense that it wasn't PvP-focused. It was very much PvE-focused, which hence the name Everquest, I would almost say. Questing was a very big part of the game. It was the first game, which is... Some people forget, it was the very first game, the very first commercial game that required a 3D graphics card. Everything else before that, or during that time, was a game that used the onboard graphics and could be enhanced with a 3D card, like a Voodoo card, but Everquest required it. Everquest was also the first game, not first, but one of the first games to make subscriptions mandatory. And this was a time, don't forget, we're talking about 1999. This was a time that most people were still using dial-up, and some people were even still paying per minute of internet access. And on top of that came UO and Everquest 1 asking for a subscription. It's amazing to think about it now in the age of free-to-play. But Everquest was the game that got over 250,000 people playing at its heyday. It was what WoW was today. It was the game that brought MMOing into the mainstream, into the public eye. People call it Evercrack. There was a Simpson episode dedicated to it. There is some Everquest is the actual big daddy of the modern MMO. And after that, Everquest 1 also spawned its first MMO sequel, which was called Everquest 2. Everquest 2 wasn't as fortunate as Everquest 1 because it was in development almost at the same period as World of Warcraft. And ironically, Everquest 2 did many of the things that World of Warcraft did. It had the same kind of questing structure. It had the same kind of gameplay. It was very much, you would almost say, a World of Warcraft clone, but it was basically the other way around. But EQ2 launched a little bit later than WoW, or around the same area, but World of Warcraft then got the big hype and swept up everybody into the game, and EverQuest 2 was has kind of fallen by the wayside, and still has its share of fans.
It was the first fully voiced MMO, wasn't that what they were calling it?
Yes, that I was getting to that. It was the first fully voiced MMO. It had a lot of voice acting that didn't really. I mean, if we're thinking of fully voiced, we're thinking of a game like Star Wars: The Old Republic, where we have actually cutscenes and acting and stuff like that. And EQ2 didn't have that. It had lots of talking, and quest text was spoken aloud, but it didn't add much to it in the sense of that there was drama. It was more like, okay, you have to kill 10 rats, and then there was somebody who took at least 5 minutes to explain that you had to kill those 10 rats. But it was there. It was a high production value thing. EverQuest 2 also didn't have graphics that captured people's hearts. World of Warcraft won a lot of people over with its stylized and cartoony nature that ran on a lot of systems. EverQuest 2 was trying to get to this realistic look, but also had very high system requirements. So high, in fact, that I, on my Alienware i7 processor gaming computer, still cannot play EQ2 on its highest settings without dipping in frame rate.
Wow.
So this was a game that required a lot of you, but gave back a lot as well. It still is a great, deep fantasy RPG, and it got so many expansions now. EverQuest 2 is a little bit of a success, but not a big one. And now comes the reason that we're sitting here, Everquest Next, which is the next iteration of the Everquest franchise. It is a completely different take on the world of Norath, the world that Everquest is set in. It is a game that is going to attempt to change everything we know about MMOs. And we've heard this before, but judging by the videos they showed, SOE is serious about some very big innovations, and we're going to get into that soon into detail. We're going to look at some videos about that. So that's basically my little setup for the EverQuest history.
And there's a lot of stuff that also came out with some stuff that EverQuest Next is talking about as new tech and stuff like that. But before we get into that sort of stuff, why don't we talk about the 4 big pillars, 4 grails that they talked about in this presentation as being the important parts of the gameplay. The first being different gameplay, the second being Destructible World, the third being reactive AI, and the fourth being permanent change. So these are the 4 grails that they say outline their design philosophy about how they went about making EQ Next. We've got a few different things, not tons of, as Harry said before we recorded here, was many words spoken but not lots said, right?
Yeah, I must say the second time I went through the video, I picked up more than I initially picked up, especially from looking at the videos in a different light. The different gameplay is one that is, at first, was most puzzling. When you listen to it in order, and they're saying, the guy on the stage said, we're going to do things different. Everybody has played a lot of Dungeons and Dragons, that's what he said. And with Dungeons and Dragons, he meant this is the core system that is driving, well, every RPG and MMO in existence currently, which is you go out into the world, you kill a lot of creatures, and by gaining experience, you go through this tech tree and build up your character, get better loot, and you continue until you are at the cap. And that's the classic D&D setup. And he said, we're going to do things differently. How? We'll get to that later in the other grails, but one of the main things that they want to change is the class system. Rather than picking a set class at the start and having to keep playing that until the end, your starting class is more your first step into the world, and after that you can find and add over 40 classes to your character. And that reminds me a little bit of the job system in the old classic Final Fantasy V game, where you could also gain jobs, as they were called, that added, for example, you could play a mage and then add the job assassin. So all of a sudden you were a mage that could wield 2 daggers and backstab, or add a warrior and you could learn the heavy armor skill. So you will be a mage backstabbing wearing heavy armor, and which is as fun as it sounds, even though it was in the 16-bit area and not that impressive graphically. But the entire idea of being able to build up your classes your own way, that's what they're going for in Everquest Next, and that's what they're calling multiclassing.
And we'll talk about that a little bit more. We do have 5 classes that are confirmed so far, and those are Rogue, Warrior, Tempest, Blade Master, and Wizard. We only saw the Warrior and the Wizard in this particular reveal that we saw, although there are some class panels, I think, that talked about a little bit more about some other stuff as well. Including in that, there are 6 confirmed races so far: Dwarf, Human, Ogre, Elf, Dark Elf, and Kerran. So, looking very exciting for all that sort of stuff. Now, what do we think about the races to begin with that we've got confirmed so far? Are we excited about those, gentlemen? Are we sad, or is it something that we're looking forward to?
Well, I played a Kerran in EverQuest 2, and I thought they would look very cool. And then I saw one in the video, and it looked completely naff. It looked like a Lion King mask, too lion-y. And that was the first impression. But then I saw it in motion, and I saw it animate, and I saw it roar, and I saw it jump.
Right.
And the Kerran are incredibly cool. But the style, this is, I think, with race, you're mostly looking at art style and what type of aesthetic you want to look at during the game, is very different from the first EverQuest and the second EverQuest. It's very different from World of Warcraft. The human character looked remarkably similar to Elizabeth in Bioshock Infinite. And it has this almost Disney-esque stylized look. It's not quite cel-shaded, it's not quite super deformed, it's not World of Warcraft. They have their own, it's almost felt marker type of style,
yes,
if that makes any sense.
And they did talk about in their design decisions that they accentuated certain features to make things like emotes easier. The eyes are a little bit bigger than normal, the mouth, really to exaggerate that for the emotes. And we've got a video with the emotes going right now, which I have to say I'm really impressed with the emotes, because they're not just, in Lotro you can set your mood, which kind of changes the shape of your face. You've got some emotes, but this is full body emotes here. This is not something simple, and I do believe they said it will integrate with the SOE webcam emote system in some way.
They went out of the way to mention SOE mode.
Yeah.
It is a system that marks your webcam, takes a shot of your face, marks your eyes and mouth, and every movement that you make with your eyes and your mouth are mirrored to your game character.
Right.
And it works exceptionally well. I've tried it out. It's not something I would use every day while playing, but when you're role playing, or when you're making machinima, or you're doing stuff that are social, I can see some amazing videos coming out of this animation system. And it also shows that this is the reason why characters in a Disney animated classic, or in Toy Story for that matter, have big faces and big eyes, and because you have to see the emotion more clearly than with actual humans.
Yeah.
You want to have this, and they do a very good job of that.
So they also talk about, with the Destructible world, the second Grail, that the entire world is built of voxels, and that it's all procedurally generated. Harry, you've got some thoughts on voxels as well, because you've done a little digging into the history of the voxel.
Well, the voxel is one. I mean, we are living in the age of the polygon right now, which means triangles, and that means every character, every graphical representation on the 3D image on the screen is made up out of thousands of little triangles.
Right.
This is obviously not the only way to represent the world on a video screen. Another very famous example is sprites. Sprites are 2D, 8 by 8 or 16 by 16 or 32 by 32 pixel flat images that you can manipulate on a 2D plane. That's the second way of visualizing stuff. The third one, and that's something that's in development for a long time, and it's being used in mostly scientific and simulation systems, is the voxel. A voxel is a volumetric pixel. A pixel, obviously a 2D dot on the screen. A voxel volumetric is a 3D dot on the screen. So it's something that has 3 dimensions, height, width, and depth. If you want to know what a voxel really is, the best example, the most famous example right now is Minecraft. Minecraft is a voxel-based game, and the voxels in Minecraft are huge. They are big blocks of about a 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet diameter, and everything is that same size. Obviously, that's a kind of primitive way of doing voxels, because if you use very small voxels, just like if you have a higher resolution display with smaller pixels, you can get more detailed images. This is also not new. An adventure game called Outcasts, I think it's from the 90s, a PC-based game. I've put a video in our notes, we could show that. That is a voxel-based landscape, and even though it looks a little bit crude by today's standards, you can still see that they have smooth mountains and landscape stuff that's all built up out of those little pixels. What is the big advantage of a voxel is that you can destroy it. As you can see in Minecraft, you can blow holes in walls. If you have little voxels, you can do detailed destruction, and you can do detailed buildings of very high fidelity, solid objects in the game world. And a nice example of destructibility in voxels is the game Rocket Ride, which is completely coincidentally, a Dutch production. It's a 2D voxel-based game where the object of the game is destroying your enemies, and the landscape is also completely destructible. And that shows the crunchiness, the unpredictability of using voxels for a destructible landscape. And voxels is what they are using to build the entire world of Everquest Next. And that is huge.
That is pretty darn cool, because, as you said, you can destroy everything. And that also brings to the question of the procedurally generated stuff. What does it mean that everything is procedurally generated? And to put it in its simplest form is that the game has a set of different parts, different instructions that it can then use to put together different environments. If you, for example, destroy a tree, or you dig a hole, or anything like that, the game doesn't have to have a graphic to represent that. Does not have to have a database that it can pull from and plot that down there. It can use the information that it knows about the voxels, and it can procedurally, in process, while you're playing, generate that environment.
It's that, and it's also, you're saying tree, that's maybe the best example, and it's something that's been, a lot of experiments have been doing in trying to grow procedural trees. There are simple rules for a tree. You have basically a big branch that spawns little branches that spawn even smaller branches, and each branch can spawn leaves. If you have that rule, those simple 4 rules of branches sprouting trees, leaves, if you have those rules and you put them in a computer program and you add a little randomized seed in there, no pun intended in this case, you can have all kinds of different trees, and no tree will look like the other tree, but they are based on the same rules, and that way you can build an entire landscape. Again, Minecraft procedurally generates the entire world. Is it Cube World or Cube Land?
Cube World.
Cube World. Cube World does the exact same thing. The entire landscape is not something that's handmade. It's created from a simple set of rules. And that's an interesting development as well, because you could, in theory, have an infinite world of exploration.
Right, but this is also different than randomized stuff, which just plops different parts together, which pulls from a database, right?
Yeah.
The procedurally, like Diablo dungeons, are randomized. They are not procedurally generated.
I would beg to differ there. There
Really?
are still yeah, because if you completely randomize a dungeon in Diablo, you would have a lot of dead ends. You could have
True.
corridors that would go nowhere, and that's not the case. They have some rules there that make sure that each level is working.
Yes.
And that's the same. That is a procedurally generated piece of content, and that's it's very. There is no true random in computer programming, and if you do true random, then you will not end up with something that's aesthetically pleasing. So it's a combination of, you have this set that the computer program has to follow, and you inject it with a random seed to make sure that no two things look the same.
Yes. Good. And you found an example of something procedurally generated, because this is not something new, right?
Well, that's the interesting. Procedurally generated is something that's definitely not new. In fact, back in the day, this was the best way for computer game designers to create big worlds. Because you don't have to have everything stored in memory. You can let the computer do the work on the fly. And one of the games that did this was the game Rescue on Fractalis, which is a very old, I think, Commodore 64 game, or maybe even older than that. It's a Lucasfilm game, and this was before they did the Star Wars titles. And it used the mathematical construct of the fractal, which is a it's part of chaos theory. We don't have to go that far. It basically, I know I'm not bluffing. I know what I'm talking about here, but it's basically a way of generating a landscape in this game that is based on the procedural rules, and it looks like a mountainous landscape that is generated on the fly based on mathematical principles. And for its day, it looked hugely impressive, because it looked like an actual flight simulator where you could fly through valleys and over mountains, and you had to rescue astronauts that could turn out to be aliens if you were unlucky. But the idea of using a procedurally generated landscape is in fact not new at all.
Right. So lots of stuff to talk about here. Let's move along, but before we do that, let's take a quick second to talk about our first sponsor, GoDaddy. Get your new domain or transfer for only $2.95. Getting a new domain or website or transfer is easy with GoDaddy. You'll get amazing 24/7 support, all the benefits and features that a regular GoDaddy customer gets, but none of the extra costs. We have a special deal for our listeners where for just $2.95 you can get a new domain or transfer, which will come with a free one-page website and a photo album. So you want to get yourself set up in blogging, you want to make your I Love EQ Next site, which I just checked on GoDaddy, it is available. You can get set up with this $2.95 new domain, and you can get blogging with the free one-page website, or maybe you want to make a photo blog, find all the awesome pictures that you can find of EQ Next. You can get all that set up and make it super awesome, all thanks to the help of GoDaddy. Now, Leonor, if people do want to do this, what are some of the ways that we can help them out?
They can click on the GoDaddy logo at MMOReporter.com to get their $2.95 domain, or use the coupon code MMO295 and get your own site up and running in no time.
Awesome. So let's move along to the next bit and talk a little bit about how the game deals with movement through the world, because Leonor, I am amazingly impressed with this. I think it is probably one of my favorite parts of the presentation, was seeing these characters run through the world. What did you think?
This really feels like a the way it looks like a console game. I've seen a lot of console games move like this. You can slide down hills, you can vault over stuff while you're running. You don't have to hit a jump button or anything like that. You can double jump in the air, which I don't think any MMO has in it right now.
Yes, WildStar has it.
Yes, WildStar has double jumping. That's correct.
It, okay.
Well, it's not out yet, though, so I can give Leonor that. And each class has its own ability, right? Each class has its own ability. Like wizards have a teleport, warriors have a leap. That is just amazing. What do you
It's
think, Harry?
well, I've been talking so much. I would like Leonard to have some of the spotlight as well.
It really reminds me of a console game. When I first watched it, I was like, "Wow, this is this." I really think that the this is probably going to be announced for PlayStation.
I wouldn't be surprised, but I hope not, because the prior experience with console MMO ports is that they limit the functionality of the UI to make it work with the console system.
Okay. In this case, I would be hugely surprised if they would not do a PS4 game with
Oh,
this. For the very, I've said this before, and I'm not saying this because I am always right, but doesn't
because
hurt
you're
either.
not. We found that out
Shut,
last week.
shut up! I'm being serious here. And right. No, but the SOE mode thing, which was obviously, I've said this, and it was a prototype that they used in EverQuest 2 to see if it worked. And what it showed was that you could use a very social thing, namely your visual expression, your facial expression, and put it into the game without using a keyboard. What do people lack who have a console? It is a keyboard. What do they have? Their voice, their face. The new console generation is a generation of cameras in your living room staring at you. What better way than to utilize this in a social gaming environment like an MMO? I think this is almost proof that this game is coming to PS4. Not only that, I think it is going to be one of the... I don't think there will be much time between the PC and the PS4 version.
Oh,
And this is going to be it.
I think so too. I think they will be there. I haven't had great experiences. Defiance was not a great port in that way. There's so many communication issues in an MMO which is based on communication. I mean, I don't have a headset for my Xbox. That doesn't limit me on PC if I don't have a headset. There's the whole mouse and keyboard thing.
Well, if I may,
Yeah.
I just did a feature about 5 MMOs that were announced for consoles that
Yes.
didn't make it. Age of Conan, Star Trek,
Yes.
all those games that were all announced and didn't make it for all various reasons. But I also noted, and I believe this, that all it takes is one title that shows how it's done, just like Halo showed how a shooter can be a full experience on a console. Before Halo, there were no shooters that were uncompromisingly good on a console. You always had this nagging feeling of I need a mouse and a keyboard. Halo solved the control issues. We need something like that for an MMO. An MMO is a more complicated thing
Absolutely.
to solve. It is more
Agreed.
complicated for the exact same reason that you give. It is a social game. You need communications. It's not a control issue so much because if you're playing DCUO on the PS3, it controls fine. If you play Defiance on the Xbox, it plays fine. It's the chatting, it's the social, it's the finding groups. That's the thing to solve.
Right.
And if they are able to do that and here comes the rallying call system, which is the public quest, which is the event system of Everquest Next. That is a system that requires no typing communication to get cooperation going. And I think that genre, that development in gameplay, it lends itself excellently to a console.
Well, no gameplay, maybe other than stuff that's requires a specific coordination, requires communication between groups. Defiance doesn't require communications for the Arc Falls. Rift doesn't require communication for the
Exactly.
but you don't see those. Like, again, the problem is more than I don't think it's a very complex problem. Very complex. All right.
I think we talked
I
about
have a
Yeah.
couple points too, but it goes along with the next section here, which is with the classes. There is going to be eight starter classes. You can find the other classes as you play, which is kind of nice. So you don't have to keep making alts. You can go out and find the classes and just switch classes. I think they even said that you can switch them on the fly, so probably before combat.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Sounds about right. Yeah.
it sounds about so the abilities are based on weapons equipped, very much like Guild Wars 2. And I think they said that there were class skills as well, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so there's weapon skills and then there's class skills. You have 4 slots for each, so there's going to be 4 weapon skills and 4 class skills. To me, that really sets it up for the PlayStation controller.
Um, and
Yeah.
even if we let go of at least I would like a console version. Chris wouldn't, and he's entitled to being
I
wrong.
never said I wouldn't. It's a big problem to solve.
But this also reminds me a lot of Guild Wars 1 and 2. And if we combine, shall we get into the classes and the 40 classes a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. Let's get
Yeah.
into that. The multiclassing.
Yeah, multiclassing. They said you can gather 40 classes in the game and add them to your own and create your own character. And that sounds and if you add that, what you just said, Leonor, about having basically a skill deck of 8 skills available, that sounds a whole lot like the Guild Wars 2 system combined with the Guild Wars 1 system of almost finding unlimited sets of skills that you can add. So I am very excited about this because it adds it takes the original vision of Rift of having souls that you can slot in and out and build your own character, but it combines it with it combines it with a kind of a loot hunt, or you're looking for new classes to discover to add to your character rather than finding a new sword or a new shield. You want this new class. And I think that's a very nice carrot on the stick. To go out and learn about knowing how to be a thief rather than a warrior, I think is much more interesting than.
And it's all based around the combination of your class, which, like we talked about, well, you'll have those starter classes, which we mentioned. It could be all of them, or it could be some of them that we mentioned off the top that have been announced, and then the classes that you find out around the world that you can then mix and match with, and it's based around the weapon and the class. In some ways, this could be seen as somewhat limiting. You have to have this specific weapon out if you want that specific ability. Whereas in other games, sometimes you find that you have all your abilities available, and then your weapon is just your method of dealing the damage. Leonor, what do you think? Do you think this is going to be something that players are going to get used to? It seems like they've gotten used to it in Guild Wars 2. Is it going to take hold in other games like EQ Next year?
Well, Guild Wars 2, I know they have it. People also do it in Secret World. They can switch out all of the skills that they've earned.
And is that based on? Well, it is based on skills. Are based on weapons, there, aren't they? And then you have a few other ones in Secret World.
Yes. It's all based around weapons, and then there's some extra ones too. But it comes down to a question that somebody asked during their panel. With all of these weapons and skills and everything that you're going to get and earn, and you have this, whole table of things that you can just swap out, are people going to just take specific ones that they feel are the best and that their guild tells them that are the best and just play that, like the Uber class that everybody's going to copy and mimic? We had this problem in Final Fantasy Online 11 where you could multi-class. There were, I believe, close to 30 classes by the time they got done with classes, and you could take any 2 of those and put them together, and you would get about half the skill set of each one. But the community only wanted you to play specific sets. So you couldn't play what you wanted to play. You had to play... you had to pick 2 mage classes to become a healer in most raids. And a lot of people just would not let people into the group if they didn't have that specific set of skills. So this came up during the panel, and their answer was that there's going to be enough variety in the game to have kind of a balance the whole time. And if there isn't a balance there, then they pretty much fail at their balance. But they're trying to set up a balance and have things ready to go.
I think part of it too is humans like to min-max. They like to get the most efficient way to do stuff. I don't know, Harry, I don't know what it's like in Eve, but I know in Rift with the Soul system, it wasn't you have to do this, but there was, you know, this is the most efficient. This is the best way to do it. There's builds that you can get set up like that. Guild Wars is not so strong just the way the game is built. There's not the content to go through the progression content. Did you see the same thing in Eve, Harry, when you were in there, that you had, if you wanted to play this role, you should have this type of ship with this loadout?
Well, it's more that in Eve, it's more you train skills to be able to do stuff. It's much more analogous to getting a diploma in the real world. If you want to be a doctor, you have to go to med school. So if you want to fly a big freighter in Eve, you have to get the correct skill set for that. But it's not like people are telling you, oh, you have to train for this and this because otherwise we won't let you in. It's more, if you go to a corporation and you want to be part of that and you want to be part of a military corporation, then you better have be a good soldier and have the correct skills to fly fighters. And it's more that way. And
Isn't that not saying the same thing in a different way?
No. The difference is, in Eve you choose what you want to do by training the skills that you need to do the stuff that you like. The time it takes to train up to the bigger stuff is so long that only the most hardcore Eve player will start planning for his late game career the moment he gets into the game. Nobody really does that. What you can do in Eve is relatively quickly get up to speed in a new profession, takes a couple of days of training, and you are proficient to do anything that you want to do, but to get actually good at it, you need more training. And if you want to do high-level stuff, just like in any game, you must have high-level training. So you specialize, but you only start to specialize once you discover that you like to do that. So that self-balances. It's not like people are forcing you into a certain role. It's more you'll find people that you can join to do the stuff you like.
But isn't that just... Sorry, but I disagree. It's the same thing with raiding. That's the stuff you like. So with, something like WoW, if you find that you really like raiding, well, then you'll make sure that you get the gear and the build that works well for raiding. So you find this stuff that you like, and then you train up the stuff that you need to be able to do the stuff that you like.
Yeah, but it's not like the difference is what Leonor describes in Final Fantasy XI. The problem there is that training up 2 classes took hundreds of hours.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And if you and there was no on-the-fly switching, like, okay, I don't like being a mage healer. Tomorrow I want to be the tank in a dungeon. That's not going to happen in Final Fantasy XI. Okay, and the game was also this was a very classical, kill a lot of monsters, get experience, and progress type of game. That also funnels people more into a min-maxing build than, for example, EVE Online. EVE Online isn't about min-maxing, it's about opening up a spectrum of things. No. Opening up a...
Sorry, I had to joke.
I might not be seeing Eve anymore, but you don't need to be insulting to her.
Anyway, sorry, we're getting on very specific in this one point, but to get back to my original point for bringing that stuff up, isn't it kind of part of human nature to want to be efficient, to get through the content for many people, and therefore, if you're going to want to do the rallying point calls, which we'll talk about, and you want to be leading those, and you want to always be at the forefront in doing this, won't you research and find out which is the most efficient combination of classes, and then proceed to try and get yourself to that place?
Let me answer this in a different way. When I wrote my review of Rift a couple of years ago, I gave it a 9, and the way I described Rift was a game that was constantly trying to divert your attention from your goal. Because you're going into the landscape and you want to do a quest, but rather than just doing the quest, some rift opened up and you were dragged into a new event. You found some people, you went with them, do some other rifts, and at the end of the day, you did completely different things than you actually planned to do. Right? That is rift. Even
That's rift.
more strongly in Guild Wars 2. It's but then I wrote this review, and there was one comment of a guy who said, "He is full of stacco." Not using that word. It's completely not true. I played that game and I reached max level in 2 days, and there was nothing to do at end game. And I said, okay, but then you were not playing it right. I mean, you just rushed to the end, just like you might have done in World of Warcraft, but that is not the game of Rift. You can do that, you are free to do that, but if you are not having a good time by skipping the entire game, that is your fault, not the game's fault. And if people are doing the same thing in Everquest Next, if the game is not set up in a leveling endgame structure and people still approach it in that way, yeah, sorry, that's then their problem, not the game's.
Okay. There we go. So they also talked about, we talked about the mixing matching, we talked about the weapons. Dave Georgeson also mentioned that crafters are going to get very excited when SOE starts talking about the way in which you can mix and match some of the weapon parts, which will impact not just the look of the weapon, but also what it can do. So that's pretty cool.
I think it's the entire idea of weapons based to your linked to your skills. It's such an obvious idea.
It is.
It is so logical that if you have, for example, a bow, that it has a different ability than a lance or a dagger. But in most MMOs, it's just a number. It's a stat. And I like that Guild Wars and Everquest Next are using actually approaching weapons as weapons.
Right, it's like in Rift, the bow for warriors is a stat stick. Right,
Exactly.
It's just there for stats because you really don't ever use it. Also, let's get right into the combat now. We've got a few combat shots that they showed off at the reveal, and I was pretty happy with how. I mean, obviously these were set up shots for the first little bit here. We have some gameplay footage later, but you know, showing the chromosphere, which was a big sphere that blew up for the wizard, as well as the vortex, which the wizard kind of went in, cast the vortex, and then all the enemies were sucked in, and then the mage teleported out as part of the skill, and they all blew up and went boom. That was pretty cool. I liked how that looked. It was very good animations. Seemed very clear. It seemed very, you know, a mix between action-based combat, like a Neverwinter sort of thing, or not even Neverwinter, but Terra, and sort of a more traditional MMO. I thought it looked cool. And then we also had the the warrior as well, that showed off a couple of different abilities as well. First of all, there was a charge attack, which was called Unstoppable Force. Also really, really cool. But if you notice, going through, when he's charging, he's hitting stuff and it's flying out of the way. And just looks like a blast. Forceful blow as well, a big hammer bash, and then a shield bash, pushing everything back, including the corpses.
There's also the unstoppable force, and the interesting thing is there are no immovable objects, because the entire destructible environment thing comes into play, which I find interesting. And you also see that in much of the videos that they show, that everything that you do to creatures, you can almost all do to the landscape as well. So stuff crumble, buildings crumble, trees are blown over. Your skills affect the landscape almost as much as they do your enemies.
Yes. Yeah, I thought it was really, really cool. You saw a warrior doing whirlwind attacks, and the warrior was destroying the ruins that they were standing in, and they also saw the mage doing a couple things, and this is part of they talked about this in the Destructible world bit too, but the mage puts up a wall, you know, that's made of voxels, so it comes up, and then destroys the bridge that the kobolds, I guess it is, or goblins, or whatever they are running across. That is pretty darn cool.
it's amazing that that kind of tactics come into play, and it's something to take into. I mean, if you are standing on the bridge and you are using a skill that would destroy the bridge, you would fall down.
Right.
Hmm.
Stuff like
Right.
that
Yeah.
opens up so many fun opportunities to grief everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Well, it
so
does.
right.
It so does.
Yep.
There's tons of stuff that it does, and we've got as we're talking about the combat here, we've got a pretty long shot showing in the video of our two heroes, the Kerran warrior and the human wizard, fighting a lich or something underground, and it looks pretty darn cool. Also, talking about the combat telegraphing, which you were talking about earlier, Harry. Did you want to go over what you wanted to mention about that?
Well, you see whenever the big boss is doing a major attack, you can see an outline of the area of effect of his attack.
Yeah.
And that goes both for the magical abilities as for the physical hits. For example, if the enemy is going to do a push forward, then a couple of seconds before his attack actually starts, you see a red outline, seeing the area where he's going to move to and what's going to be the damage area. And that's identical to the way it's set up in WildStar. That also shows me that this is a very action-based combat system and not so much a my stats are bigger than your stats game. Obviously, stats are going to be a part of this. I'm pretty sure somebody who has played this game longer will have more health or whatever. But it's more about connecting hits and dodging hits than anything else, and that's WildStar.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Secret World has that too, and they have a dodge system in there, and you have to dodge the cone or get out of the way of the area effect skill, and yeah, it's you're gonna have to move around quite a bit.
But it's not as fluid. I mean, let's be fair. The game, I mean, Guild Wars 2 has a very fluid combat system. WildStar is the same, feels the same. Double tap in a single direction, and you dodge, roll in that direction. Secret World is more stiff in its movement. It doesn't feel as fluid or actiony as
No.
WildStar and Guild Wars 2 do. EverQuest 2 do.
Yeah,
No,
I
Guild Wars
agree
2.
with
I said
that,
it
but
right
it still
first time.
does put it on the. They do put down the triangles and the cone
Yes.
and everything on the ground for you to get out of the way of it, and it actually gives like a kind of timer as well along with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's we've seen this kind of combat before.
Yes.
One thing that kind of bugged me about this little bit of video is when I saw this, I thought, when you look at the background, you see that this little temple is being destroyed, but things still float in the air. And I thought, that can't be right. And apparently it isn't, because this is a magical place where this is happening. Later
Mhm.
on in the video, things do crumble and fall to the ground.
Yes.
So I was worried about this because one of the things about voxels is that it usually doesn't include gravity. It's just a 3D space where you can pack away the blocks and they will just suspend in midair, like in Minecraft.
Right.
Apparently, that is just this area and not the overworld, and I'm happy about that.
Right, and you
because
can kind of
that would
see
be
it
silly.
beforehand, emanating from the this enemy's starting location, right? The
Yeah.
tomb that they're at, or whatever it is, sort of emanating. It's almost like a sphere out from that spot.
Yeah,
So
there is obvious magic here, but
Are-
that's just a little worry that was negated later.
yeah, and Leonor, what do you think? Is this combat? Is this something that looks like a lot of fun to you? Are you thinking it's too actiony? Is it just right? What does it look like to you?
I don't see too much action. I think they're showing off a lot of skills. They're showing off a lot of combat, but they don't show any kind of like jumping around, dodging. They all just kind of come close and smack things and just show off the
Yeah.
attacks that are going on. It was kind of funny during the panel. There was a woman that asked a question, and she said, the skills look really cool. The structure, you could destroy everything, and there's rocks all over the place, and there's just dirt everywhere. How are we going to be able to see anything that we're doing? And they said that they just bumped up the graphics because they really wanted to show off everything for the show. So
Yeah.
it's going to be a little bit less than that. So it's the game is looking really pretty. But back to this, yeah, I don't see I don't see dodging. It looks like an action game. It looks like um, a full action RPG.
Yeah,
But I'm not seeing too much of that right now.
and I'm every single telegraphed combat move. That warrior is just soaking it up. I don't
Yeah,
see,
he's
like you said, it's just no dodging whatsoever. I mean, it could just be
like
because
like
it's the
Gary
video.
says, it's clear. It's clear that the area effect is right there. The line is right there, but he's
Yeah,
not moving anywhere.
yeah,
Well, you saw the mage, the female mage, do that. He literally said, okay, if you're in a dangerous situation and you need to get out of dodge, you can use the teleports to get out of the way. So there is an absolute certainty that there's this
yes.
dodge mechanic there, and they showed it. But
Well,
apparently,
that was the vortex ability, wasn't it? That was
I
part of
think
it, where you
that's
pulled the vortex in and then it teleported you out.
yeah, but it was a definite dodge, but it just used a
Yeah,
counter attack. I mean,
yeah,
what I took from this was that this warrior was a tank.
yeah,
hmm
That's all, and that doesn't matter. Also, I think a lot of things we see later on in the video when they were doing the live demonstration of the devs going through the area, there was an obvious bug that everybody was basically ignoring, where the enemies just stood there and didn't move anymore. So I think a lot of things didn't really go exactly as they wanted them to go, or were still a work in progress, which obviously it still is. So I don't think we should read too much into everything we're seeing here. We are looking
hmm
at a very early version of the game.
well, yeah, exactly. And they probably dumped a whole bunch of enemies into the world for these people to knock around and make silly. And I'm
Right.
showing that gameplay. It's basically some of the developers behind the stage going through this combat. Now, what I don't understand is there's only 2 people on the screen playing, but there's like 6 at computers.
I didn't get that either. I
It's
didn't get
just
that
like
either.
in Pacific Rim. You need 2 people to play a single character.
Anyways, yeah. That's awesome. That's the best explanation I've ever heard. Combat looks cool, though, in that gameplay bit, too, with the destructible environment. The warrior uses that attack a few different times and pounds the floor down a
But
little
you see
bit.
how the enemies are frozen in place? That seems like a bug.
Yes, now that thing that we
Did
saw in
get
the
hit.
underground combat is now going again, and okay, now I see the other characters. It's 2 identical warriors. That's why they looked the same, because they're decked out exactly the same.
Ah,
The Kerran warriors. Anyway, so that is the combat, looking pretty cool, and we're going to move on and talk about destructibility right after we talk about our next sponsor, which is Guild Launch. Slay more dragons with Guild Launch. Guild Launch is the most complete guild website builder platform available, with a massive amount of templates to choose from and tools to make them your own. They've got guild forms, shout boxes, integrated chat. You can do it all drag and drop, or if you want to dump everything and go into the CSS, you can do that too. You really can check it out. It's going to be fantastic. Leonor, I bet you we can give people a little bit of a deal if they want to get their EQ Next guild set up.
Sure can. They can go to guildlaunch.com and check it out and create a free site. When they decide that they want to upgrade, they shouldn't forget to use the coupon code MMO Reporter for their first month free.
All right, so let's talk about destructibility. Now, I've got a really great clip here, and it says pretty much what they were trying to do when they were building this game and when they decided to how they were going to design it.
We wanted to be able to blow up anything, anytime, anywhere. So we built the entire world out of little teeny pieces called voxels. And we can literally blow up anything, anytime, anywhere.
Now, that is pretty huge. We talked about voxels already. We already described what those do. But I was just so impressed with that because of that idea. The idea, they mentioned it once, I think a little bit later in the presentation, that you can literally pick up a pick and start digging down, and you can get through the different layers of the world, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. I was really, really impressed with the way in which like we talked about before, the mage and the warrior destroyed the world, the crystal wall, the broken bridge, the whirlwind, all that sort of stuff. And it's going to be PvE and PvP. So, you're hiding behind a piece of cover that might not be there very long. Leonor, you do a lot of PvMP in Lotro. You know, having this destructible environment and this destructibility in the world, I mean, what would that mean as a PvPer?
Oh, easy. You're not safe. You have to keep moving. There's no way for you to plan ahead, and even you wouldn't even be able to depend on knowing the map at that point because the map's going to be constantly changing.
Yeah, and the whole world, like we talked about, it's procedurally generated, so it's not like if you hit this particular wall. Every time you're going to get a hole right here. So even though they're hitting the wall, you can hide there, and it'll still work. Because who knows? Maybe they're hitting it from a little bit of a different angle, and maybe the hole will be just a little bit different. Harry, are you excited by this? I don't think you PvP all that much, or do you?
I pee a lot.
PvP.
Not to be
Don't
pedantic,
cross the
but
streams.
Not to be pedantic, but the destructibility isn't procedural. That's physical. That's physics based. So what you're saying is basically, if a wall is hit from a different angle, you could get a different type of destruction. That's not procedurally generated. That's just physics based.
Aren't they building that wall? Not rebuilding. I'm sorry. Aren't they setting it up in such a way that they're not pulling from this is
not exactly. No, they are doing a lot of design in this. I mean, and they have talked about actual PvP scenarios. For example, one of the things that they talked about was a siege battle, where one team is defending a keep and the other is attacking it with siege equipment like catapults and trebuchets. And there you have destructibility in action, because just like I would almost say a primitive version is available now in Guild Wars 2's World vs. World, where you can actually attack a keep from another side and try to tear down its walls, Mr. Gorbachev. You can also do that. You can now do that much more precisely and much more freely in a voxel-based PvP setup, where you can use a battering ram to try to force a small hole in the back of the keep, while your main force is trying to knock down its main doors, and have a surprise attack from another angle that isn't as obvious as trying to tear down a wall which has a health bar. Because now you can pinpoint a specific weakness in the structure. And all those kinds of things make PvP a much more dynamic proposition, especially if you are using... I mean, the whole idea of a keep is putting stuff in the way of the enemy. And if the enemy is able to actually take that stuff away, then you have an interesting situation. It's much more diverse, much more dynamic than the standard PvP that we see now.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm definitely looking forward to it too. Now the fourth the fourth grail that they were talking about was the Emergent AI and the way in which they were building the world. It's something that I think, as an EVE player, again, and I bring up EVE because it is the most well-known sandbox game out there. We had this discussion before. This, as well as everything else in the questing and all that stuff, which we'll talk about later, all this stuff makes this a much more sandbox game than a theme park game, right, Harry?
Well, first to set it up, what they're talking about is a system where the NPCs, the computer-controlled characters, have likes and dislikes, just like people do. I mean, and he gave this example of, let's say there is this band of orcs. And what do orcs like? They like gold, they like killing people. What don't they like? They don't like to be killed themselves, and they don't like to hang around in a place where nothing is happening.
And they don't like guards.
And they don't like guards. They especially don't like guards. So
right.
If you have a city has guards. So will orcs be near a city? No, because guards will come and kick their asses. What do orcs like? They like a nice little abandoned piece of road that occasionally has some adventurers going past that they can jump and murder. So they will find a spot that they like and stay there as long as it suits them. If the road is no longer traveled, they will get bored and then move to another spot. If guards show up to try to kick them away, they will also leave because they don't like to be damaged. So they have this like-dislike system that determines where they go and what actions they take. Why is this interesting? They don't have spawn camps anymore. In a normal game, in a standard MMO, you have a lot of creatures that the devs will put in an area, in a field, so you have a certain random number of orcs going around the field, and you can kill them and combat them or be killed, whatever. In this case, they just literally said, we let loose a bunch of creatures into the world, and then after that, it's hands off, and let the creatures sort out what they want to do. And that makes it very much a sandbox, because what happens then is emergent. If players do not interact with the enemies, they might multiply, they might move to a place where they have better chances of survival or better chances of doing the things they like to do. And that means that everything the players do has a profound impact on the status of the world. And that is a life of consequence. The choices that you as a player make have an effect on the actual world, and it is not a... Guild Wars 2 was promising this, but they had this almost reset loop in their activities. It was not very it is impossible that a bunch of creatures, for example script, that are out there near Divinity's Reach, that they will wander off and end up near the Black Citadel. That's not going to happen, because they are tied to their zone, they are tied to their script, and they will do stuff reacting to the players, but they basically are just a ride in a theme park. In this case, what they are promising is that the creatures in the game will be able to just uproot their camp, go to another place. Oh my god, they're coming for me. Oh my god.
Twice this time they've sent police to your door. SOE does not like what you're saying, Harry.
Officer, I'm not talking about actual murder here. No, but this is the big difference, and that's and in Eve, obviously, we do not have many NPCs. We have some NPC police ships, but they are not exactly intelligent. They just spawn and be powerful. But people react the same way. If you are camping a gate camp in Eve and you don't like it because nothing is happening, you move somewhere else where you can get some action. And in this case, that role is fulfilled by NPCs.
And like we were talking about in the pre-show here, Guild Wars 2 promised persistence, not permanence, and it seems like Everquest Next is promising persistence and permanence. So if you come in on launch day and there's this spawn of orcs waylaying adventurers going down this road, 2 years down the road, they might not be there anymore. They will be somewhere different, on some different road, attacking poor adventurers.
And it goes even further than that, and we're getting to that when we're discussing rallying calls, but the entire idea of... It's also your choices are remembered by the game, and they didn't go into much detail in that, but they were making a point of saying that every action you take in the game is remembered by the game. But they didn't really... sorry, yeah?
Is that like Google? Because it remembers everything I do.
Yes, it's exactly like Google.
Okay, good.
And I'm very worried what the American government will do with with the information of what I'm doing in Everquest Next.
That's okay. They make money off all the adult sites you visit, Harry. We're good.
The American government does?
Yes.
They make money of the adult sites?
Yes.
And there still is a big deficit?
How many sites do you visit, Harry?
Everquest Next.
So, Leonor, rallying calls were also a big highlight from this presentation. What did you take? Can you give us a quick overview of what they look like and what that means for players?
I don't remember them.
Harry,
okay.
Rallying calls were a really big part of this presentation, and something that the developer said would be very interesting for the long-term experience in the game. Can you go over them and tell us what they'll mean?
Yeah, rallying calls are the evolution of the public quest, and the public quest is something that happens in the world where everybody can join in and participate without picking up a quest. This is the basic framework. This goes a little bit further. The example they gave is that players will get a rallying call to settle a city at a certain location in the game world. So somehow people will be told, go to that location and start building a city. When people go there, they can either help build the city, whatever way they do, maybe collect resources or set up camps or whatever, or they can ignore that completely, go explore in the surroundings, pick a fight with the creatures there, try to make the world, the area safer for the people who are building the city, and all of this ties into this big main event of building up the city. Now, what happens then is purely dynamic. So just like in Guild Wars 2, the example in Guild Wars 2 was a village is attacked by centaurs, and if you do not defend from the centaurs, the village will be burned down. This goes even further. You can go attack all the creatures in the area to make it safe, but if you go too far, you might rouse a bigger evil that will come and get revenge on the puny humans that were killing its minions. So everything you are doing that is tied into this one main world event of building the city will have countless of little consequences of procedurally generated quests that spawns out of the actions that people take. For example, people who are building the city might want to dig down into a quarry to get stones to build a better defendable wall when the enemies are trying to burn down the wooden palisades. So if you are building this quarry, you might dig too deep, just like the dwarves did in Moria, and you might rouse evil that comes up from below. So then you would have creatures spawning from the quarry, coming down to the overworld, trying to attack both the humans building the city and even the creatures that were trying to drive the humans off that come from the forest. So all these dynamic events will tie into each other, all into this big rallying call of setting up the city. And this is their vertical slice of what the gameplay will be like. So the choices that you make as a player in the game will go into this funnel of likes and dislikes of the NPCs. They will respond correspondingly, and from that on, an emergent story will be told that everybody is a part of.
And it also, while this may sound a lot like the Guild Wars 2 event system, it is in a lot of ways, in that it's this push and pull. You need to be successful and move on to the next thing. But also, this, and tell me if I'm getting this right, this will be procedural because it's not the developers scripting something out. It's giving those enemies wants, needs, desires, and they then have the tools to act upon those, whether it's attacking you, attacking the other enemies, whatever they decide to do. And the developers are not telling them, writing them a script, correct?
Yeah, I remember this now. They were actually talking about that the rallying calls are going to be different on each server, too. They're going to be random.
Right, so one server will succeed in building this city, and another server will not. Now, this makes me think, we'll talk about the whole server idea later, but, they most likely sounds like they will have separate servers. But that's amazing that one server will be different than other servers because of the power of what the game can do. Mm-hmm. It is different, though, than the Guild Wars 2 one in that this is a permanent change. There will be no reset. There will be no going back to the way things were before. If they come back and take back over this city or raze it to the ground or whatever they end up doing, it's not going to be exactly... You're not starting from the same spot again. It's going to be different because maybe they'll take over the ruins. Maybe they'll build up their own city. Who knows what they can do right now?
That's a big difference, but it's also, as you said, the procedural thing is if you are able to fend off the creatures that try to set fire to your palisades, then there is no need for stone. So there will not be a quarry. So there will not be creatures coming from below trying to. So everything is kind of branching and developing, not by a set of rules, but they have created a universal set of rules, and everything if I would try to dig a tunnel down next to a already standing city, I could unleash the evils from the underworld onto that city. And that would I would be the perpetrator of unleashing the evil upon the people who are playing. So that it's that kind of dynamicism. It is that kind of whatever you do to the world does to you.
I
Right.
think the NPCs are supposed to react to you too. The things that you do in the world, they know. Well, at least in the area, they react like if you're a bad guy, they're going to react like you're a bad guy. At least I think
Yes.
that's what they were talking about.
You are absolutely right, and there is this quests that are either available or not available to you based on your actions previously. So I could imagine that if you are constantly killing a certain type of creature, then they will not be friendly to you, and they will not allow you to see their treasure chests or their secret stash of magic items, whatever. That's a primitive example, but I think stuff like that is going to be there as well. That's what they promised, at least.
All right, and the other thing that they mentioned as well, you talked about digging deep and getting a quarry. The world is built in tiers, and this is something that they have set up in such a way that if you want to, like we talked about before, pick up a pick and dig straight down, you can go through these different tiers, these different layers, all the way down to the magma core of the continent. And there's going to be things there that are going to be there for you to explore. Maybe one way that you'll be able to get in there will be an earthquake will happen, which will open up a new passageway. All sorts of different things based on the power of the engine and the rules behind it. Tons of stuff that we can do based on this tiered world system. I'm really excited about that. Now, I do have one question, Harry. What do you think the likelihood is of some underground ruin that has been put in there being utterly destroyed before we have the chance to explore it because an earthquake hit?
Well, it's
Could it happen?
Yeah, I think not, because I think those things are rendered the moment that people actually are there. Not to get too technical, but I doubt it that the entire world is already exists without people going there. I think there are chances of discovering something in the deeper layers that are generated at the moment that somebody is digging deep enough.
So do you mean like there's it's designing the world as you go through it?
I
Because
think
he
that
said he knows where, like, one of the things he said when he was talking about these tiers, we know where everything is. We know where all the ruins and dungeons are.
well,
I think
yeah,
he
but
was talking lore-wise.
Right.
Yeah.
So if lore-wise there's supposed to be a dungeon there, what happens if a huge earthquake hits and they...
no, I think it's like, okay, very simply put, if I dig 10 meters, there is this strata that contains the ruins of this battle that happened 500 years ago. If I dig 50 meters, I will go into, there is a chance of discovering ruins that are 1,000 years old. I think it's more like that. I don't
So it'll be
think that-
randomized as well? Like, it won't be
I don't-
pre-designed?
I don't think I would think it unlikely, based on the principle of voxels, that they have this. The amount of memory you would need to have this huge world already.
Yeah.
Just from a technological point of view, I don't think that would be most optimum solution. But I'm not a computer technician, so maybe the more interesting thing is I think that an earthquake can close down a cave while you're in it. Also, you have the ability, if you discover something that you think is cool and you don't want anybody else to discover it, you can collapse the entrance to the cave. So that is a possibility. I can imagine people going out of their way to close caves after people went in there.
Very interesting.
These are options there. So I think it's more along that lines. I think it unlikely that that there is a possibility of actual designed content to go broken because the devs put in a random earthquake. I don't think that's going to happen. And if it's going to happen, I think it's a bad design. I don't believe that.
All right, Leonor, what don't we know about the game yet? All this information that we've gotten, what are some factors that we're still not sure about?
How will the basic classes and discovered classes work and intertwine? Um, I think they touched on this with the panel. They said that you could just get skills and switch them out to mix and match a lot of them.
There we go.
Yeah, I think Guild Wars 1 and 2, Guild Wars 1 with the skill deck, and Guild Wars 2 with the weapon-based attacks. I think that's a good template to look at.
Awesome. What about true knight gameplay? This is not, just a darker version of the world. The example that they showed was an actual true knight where the moon was casting shadows, and a very interesting look. Do you think there's going to be any gameplay changes, Harry?
Well, EverQuest had classes that had infravision. I mean, if you were a dwarf or an elf, you had the ability to see in the dark without using a light. While if you were a human, you needed a torch or a lamp to be able to navigate the darker regions of the game. This was True Knight already, and I'm hoping that something like that will be in the game as well. What they showed was an actual lighting system where night and day were much more than just a palette swap, what you see,
Right.
for example, Lord of the Rings Online. It is night, but everything is clearly visible as clearly visible as during the daytime, and that was not the case with the demonstration of the sped up day-night sequence they showed. So I hope you need to pick up a torch to explore the darker areas. I hope you can hide in the shadows in the forest, and I hope that if you go into the darkness of the caves, you will be eaten by a grue.
Wouldn't that be cool if they had a knight PvP map?
By the way, bonus points if anybody got that reference.
Bonus points, yes. And from at Avalonier on Twitter asked how they handle servers. We don't know yet. It does sound, based on some of the things that they mentioned, like Leonor was saying earlier about the different servers having different outcomes to rallying calls, that tends to hint towards smaller ones, doesn't it, Leonor?
Yeah, it seems, at least to me, it sounded like it was going to be a normal server setup. It's probably going to be like 15, maybe 20, maybe 40. I don't know. It sounds like they really want to change it up. They really want random things to happen on all of these servers. So I'm wondering if they are planning on people switching servers to explore different worlds as well.
Could be. That would be an interesting way to do things.
Well, the most interesting thing about this whole thing to me is that they promised that the living history that would develop from playing on a server that has its own events happening. They were saying like every MMO so far is static, and everything that happens. I mean, I've made fun of that. Everybody has made fun of the guy who wants 10 pieces of wood to build his boat, and never builds the freaking boat. He must have tons and tons and tons of wood behind him.
And
he's
making money off the black market.
He is just suckering everybody. He is maybe we just don't understand him when he tries to get wood. But anyway, the thing is, that guy will still be there until the expansion pack moves him to another region. But this game will have events that will be unique. If I will play the game at launch and a friend of mine will come in a year later, I can say, oh, that city wasn't there yet, or you missed this big war, or this big destruction dragon that blew away this mountain that is now just a grassy knoll. Stuff like that will be my favorite, to be actually part of the developing story of the world and its consequences.
Yeah.
That is the most exciting thing that they've promised so far.
Yes, very, very cool. Now, there is something else very, very exciting, though, that they did announce, didn't they, Harry?
They announced two games. They announced Everquest Next, and they announced Everquest Landmark. And Landmark is, there's no other way of putting this. This is the first AAA Minecraft game.
Yep.
They are
Pretty much.
using the entire engine and the development tools that they are using to build Everquest Next, and they are opening up to the community. So this is a pure building game. You have control of the voxels. You'll get all the tools, all the recipes, all the things that the developers use to create the Everquest Next world, and you are allowed to go nuts and create everything you want to. And he made a little disclaimer, as long as the community manager allows it.
Yeah.
So I am pretty sure there will be a ban on big penises.
It's going to be the number one.
Yeah. So stuff like that is probably not going to happen. I mean, you still have to go to a private Minecraft server for that. So if you want a blocky penis, you have to go elsewhere.
Now, talking about blocky, he does also one bit, and I'll rewind the video here so that people in the chat room and watching the video can see this. He goes over the difference between a Minecraft sphere, which is very blocky and has its ledges and that sort of way, and the way the tech works in EverQuest Next and EverQuest Next Landmark, in that it will smooth out that sphere, and it will be smooth.
Yeah,
it
so
will
you
be
can,
an actual circle.
yeah,
or
so
sphere.
the not only are the actual voxels much smaller than in your typical Minecraft game, they also have the tools to manipulate the surfaces of the actual voxels, so they don't have to be completely cubical. And the main thing about Landmark is that everybody can stake a claim in the world and start building stuff and explore the world and see what everybody else built. This is part one. The second part, and I think this is extremely clever, because these developers have been looking at the online world for the past 5 years and saw how much talent there is on the internet of people who love to create stuff and go out of their way to make the most ingenious, fantastic little designs. I've seen working Turing machines in Minecraft. I've seen the Starship Enterprise NCC-1701D rebuilt to scale in Minecraft. I mean, that kind of dedication. You should harness that, and that's what they're doing. So they're setting aside a single continent in EverQuest Next Landmark, where the only rule, where there are some restrictions, where the rule is you have to build stuff that fits the lore, that fits the look and feel of the EverQuest Next world. They're going to post assignments or contests to players, like, okay, we need to have a dungeon that has this kind of setup, this storyline, it needs this, and this for gameplay, and the best one will have a chance of have his design transferred into the actual game. So they are allowing the players to participate in the design of the world, and they are basically, what I said, harnessing the creative force of the internet.
Right.
And not only that, they are allowing people to monetize their designs, because they have this SOE, I think studio is the term, I forgot the
Player
word.
Studio, I think it is.
Player Studio, yeah. Where people can create stuff in Landmark. For example, if you are able to build a very cool fortress, and it looks fantastic, you can sell that fortress, almost like the auction house in Diablo. And you can make money, and not only make money from the original design, and I thought this was incredibly clever. If somebody buys your fortress and modifies your fortress and turns it into something that's even more epic, and then sells this new product, you will still get royalties for the percentage of the design that you provided earlier. So let's say the new design uses your design as well. You get money from his sale. So your creative work is protected. You make money off it, and you are incentivized to not only build, but to build and share. I think that is a very interesting development.
This reminds me a lot of how the creative community in Second Life works.
I've never played Second Life, so I wouldn't be able to comment. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Second Life, you can make a bunch of items as well as clothes, and you can put them up on sale in their stores for people to buy. Just like how this is set up here.
Yeah, but can you make money if it's not as sophisticated as
No,
this.
no.
It's not
If
like
somebody
if you...
takes your design and modifies it, I'm not even exactly sure if you can do that or not. You're not going to get a little bit of kickback from that. Somebody would just, if they can take your design, they would probably modify it and just put it out as their own.
Right. So yeah, it
Landmark
looks
is...
really, and they're calling it a full-featured MMO. You're going to create a character, you're going to go into the world, you're going to stake your claim in the world, and then create. And you're going to have to go out and get resources, gather them, however, whatever the mechanics are going to be in the game, and you are going to create your little slice of Norath.
I think this is something I could get lost in forever. I'm very interested, and the fun thing is, this is going to come very quickly, because they have announced that Landmark will be out this winter.
Yeah, this year. They said
This
2013.
Yeah, and in winter, so they were quite specific. So we're looking at Q4 release.
Yeah.
I'm desperate to get into this just to see what we can do in that, and I'm very curious what people come up with. One of the big joy of Minecraft is looking what everybody else is building. I've done Minecraft. I've built stuff. I've had my own Minecraft server, but I am a fledgling amateur compared to most people who are out there doing fantastic stuff. And if you give people who are so creative these kinds of tools, I'm very curious what we're going to see there.
My question is that they were talking about they were going to set aside an island for people to make specific things for the game. Is Landmark part of Everquest Next then?
No, it's basically
a separate game.
It's a playground. Basically it is their way of. I think Landmark has grown out of this idea of making it a studio for players to participate. And it almost feels like they started out with the idea of we want players to design for Everquest Next. Now, how can we expand this to make it even more of a game?
Well, they talked about it in the presentation, and they said basically what happened is that the developers were spending all their nighttime weekends building stuff, and they thought, well, this is a game. People are playing this like a game. Why don't we make it a game? And then the flip side, the bonus of that is that they then get to set aside this one continent where it has to follow the rules or it's not going to stay up. And they have the right to take any design and, because you're using the same tools they do, they can then pull that right into EQ Next, and they need a tower for, some thing. Well, hey, there you go. They're going to have it.
Yeah, and I think that is a very interesting development, and I think they are brilliant in trying to do this.
Yeah.
But
So
this
if somebody buys something like a fortress, is that going to be in Landmark, or are you going to be able to use that fortress in Next?
No. There is no interaction for players between Everquest Next and Everquest Next Landmark. Landmark is a separate world. It's just that there is this. Since the tool set is identical, anything you design as a player in Landmark, the developers have the option, the ability, to take something that is designed in Landmark and insert it into Next. But it's not like you can build your own house in Landmark and then copy that over to Next. Not as far as I know, and not as far as they have announced. It's two separate worlds with a crossover possibility. And it's also not up to the players which one is going over. They will hold contests, for example, for a dungeon. Then people can then vote. The players can then vote on which one they like the best. And then from the upvoted ones, then the developers will have the final say of saying, okay, we want this, or we take part of this, or we will reject it outright. So final call is always with the developers of Everquest Next.
Make sense now?
Not with the selling part.
Okay, so
Selling part is a different thing. If you are playing Everquest Next Landmark, then you are free to design everything from scratch yourself. But if you want to buy something that somebody else designed, then the option is there. So in Landmark, you have the ability to go to an in-game store and buy the house that somebody else designed, and then put it on your claim. Then you can add to that house. You can redesign it. You can add stuff to it. And once you're happy with that, you have the option to sell that design on the store as well. So this is, I think, their monetization, that they are allowing people to buy and sell designs in the game. Of Landmark, not of Next.
Right.
Right.
Does that make sense now?
Closer.
It's basically all self-contained within Landmark, right? You know how you can craft something
what I don't get is this is a separate game of,
Yes.
like, let's say Minecraft. And you buy somebody's fort and you add to it, and then you put it back on the store for somebody else to buy and use for whatever reason. What is the incentive to keep buying these things?
Because you want it.
Because you want it, but you have it on Landmark.
No, but
you never buy anything in Everquest Next. All the buying happens in Landmark. You create something in Landmark, it stays in Landmark. So let's say that Harry builds a tower. He builds a wonderful, beautiful tower. I'm deciding I want to build a castle, so I'm going to buy his tower. Then I'm going to build myself a castle, and I'm going to use his tower for the four corners. But I'm adding the walls, I'm adding the inner keep, I'm doing all that. Then I decide I want to sell that. This is all in Landmark. I'm going to offer that schematic, let's call it, for lack of a better word, for that castle that I've just built, using Harry's towers as part of it, up on the store. You can then come along, buy that castle, and plop it down on your plot. They haven't said whether or not you'll have to get all the materials to build it, or whether you get to buy it pre-made, etc. And you're just buying the schematic, the design for it. They haven't said that. But that doesn't matter right now. You've got the design for it. Maybe it's fully made, and then you plop it down on your plot of land. This is... go ahead.
And now the incentive is also, I mean, if you're looking at Minecraft, that's already very elaborate what people can build, but it's still within the human time frame of building something detailed. The detail that you can go into in Landmark is way higher. So if you have somebody who's truly artistic and can make something that looks fantastically detailed with all kinds of textures and custom designed voxels and vertices and surfaces and whatever, that represents maybe 20, 30, 40 hours of work. And if you are in a guild in Landmark and you're trying to make a fantastically good-looking town, then it might help and to buy stuff that's already pre-made or parts. And this is, I'm not saying that I would want to spend money on that, but I can imagine people who will. Because there are people who buy spider mounts. Sorry, Chris, I had to go there.
Yeah, the goal is just kind of gray. Like, okay, are we going to be role-playing, getting money and gathering resources? Are we going to be living in these plots that we have? Or is it just to be creative and create things to build a economy of art that people have made?
It's that.
Imagine a Minecraft MMO where you have the it's just you have a, kind of survival mode almost in Minecraft, with more MMO aspects added to it. But then add a store onto it where you build something, you can then sell it to other people who might want to buy it to use it in their designs.
And then remove survival mode because there's no danger in there.
No, they haven't said that there's not going to be dangers or monsters or anything like that in Landmark. They haven't said that.
I don't
probably
believe there
won't
will be.
But
No.
I'm just saying, there could be. You might
I
find
think this
zombies.
is going to be. No, I think this is going to be buying and selling art, creating stuff that looks cool, and I'm looking. I would not easily buy money for somebody else's design in a game where the point is building something for yourself. But then again, who knows? There are people who buy gear in Diablo.
Maybe you can see how things go together better than the person who built the different parts can. And you could build something better out of the combined parts than any one of them could, because they can't see the big picture.
Well, the problem I have with this is if somebody, this is why I'm a bit curious about who would spend money on this. So if somebody builds this fantastic castle in Landmark, and I want to look at it, I can just look at his castle. I can go there. So what point would there be to having an exact? Yeah, but what would be the point of having a copy of something that somebody else made?
Because then you can change it to make it more individual. Why do you have the same car as somebody else?
Yeah, that's also something I hate.
You
That's why I always
personalize
buy.
it, right?
No,
I'm sorry. Do you
I
have a
make my own.
Mac? Do you have a Mac?
Shut up.
I know why I would
That's
spend money
different.
on it. If I were to start making something and started pulling all of these other elements into something that I want to make that looks really cool and everything, I want to be using this. I would be putting money into this if I could take this one specific thing and put it over on Next. No, I'm not saying just start plopping them all over the place, but if you can claim one small area as like your um, your farm or your property or whatever, and you can just pull a castle or small house onto your property in Next. This is kind of like a building block system to create your own thing for your own property in a bigger game. I would pay money for that.
I don't
I would
see
pay
that.
money.
I don't see that being very likely. They haven't mentioned anything about that, so it's possible. But I think you need to think of them as more distinct and separate than that.
Yeah, I think what we're going to see finally in EverQuest Next, we're probably going to see instanced areas where guilds can build their own towns the same
would be
way
cool.
that you can do in Landmark. Sorry?
That would be cool, I said. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's more likely, and maybe there would be some crossover that you could buy stuff that people design in Landmark. I would not put it past them. I think it would be a smart idea to be able to buy houses that were built in Landmark to use, but this is not the game. The game in Landmark is design stuff, and the game in EverQuest Next is a living, breathing world. So that's the big separation between the two.
Yes.
I do think that we should stop covering Landmark because I think we're going into too much detail about a game that we know very little about.
Very little about. All right, let's close things off here and end things off. A couple of quick announcements here. MMO Reporter's PAX Prime party is August 29th at the Elephant and Castle in Seattle for PAX Prime. You can find all the details at mmoreporter.com/PAX if you're planning on going, or if you're in the Seattle area and want to come out, if you're at PAX, whatever, just RSVP. All the details are at mmoreporter.com/PAX. And we also want to mention our donate page, mmoreporter.com/donate. Thank you so much to Martin for his generous donation, and I did see him in the chat room earlier, so thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. It really helps us get to PAX and all the fun
So
stuff.
now I
that we
can
do.
go too? Thanks to Martin, I can go too?
All right, Harry, if people want to get a hold of us, what are some of the different ways that they can do that?
Okay,
They're
we have a
not letting me
website
in either.
at mmoreporter.com. You can email us at mmo.reporter@gmail.com. We have a Facebook page that you can like at facebook.com/mmoreporter. We have a Twitter at mmo_reporter where you can hurl your comments at Chris. I can be reached at Harry Hall, HARYHOL. Leonor is tweetable at LAYANOR, Leonor. Our voicemail is, as always, 616-666-6778. If you cannot remember this number, you can go to our website where we have a widget and you can press a button and just leave us a message, and we are always happy to hear from you. And obviously, of course, not obvious, but of course, we have a YouTube channel which you can reach at www.youtube.com/user/MMO Reporter Network.
Awesome. Well, that was our EQ Next and EQ Next Landmark preview. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. Thank you, Harry, for a fantastic show and great editorial comments on EQ Next.
Yeah, you're quite welcome.
And thank you, Leonor, as well, for some wonderful thoughts on what's coming up with Landmark and with EQ Next. It's looking pretty good, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I was actually pretty happy that I actually knew what I was talking about this time.
And thanks to everyone in our chat room for coming out and hanging out with us. Much appreciated. And as well, thanks to everyone who downloads the podcast week after week. We really appreciate it. We hope that you download the podcast again next week, but most importantly, we hope to see you in game. And I'll add that in post. Hoo-wee.